Hello and welcome again to another episode of Battle Ready.
Oh, really?
Right? We got the dancing ones
Yeah.
recently. All right. Where today we thought we'd talk about battle slates what are they called? Battle scrolls and
Data sheets.
game updates.
There we
go. Game updates. Now, what inspired this is I was watching, and then they showed Drake an episode of Tabletop Minions with Uncle Adam, and I'll try to link to it up there. And it was very surprising to me because I love his channel. I think he's not always super hot on Games Workshop, but overall, lots of good information. And I especially like he does every other Sunday show, and he just talks about stuff. With the internet chat, and it's fun to paint and whatever while he's talking. So I like him. But anyway, he took a very negative view of balance patches. And I thought that was very interesting. From my perspective, well, before we get to us, if I could summarize, and definitely watch his video, but if I could summarize, he thought that the changes, there was too much change, speaking about 40K specifically, and too quickly, that it all happened too fast. I know that when AOS moved to wanting to do a quarterly balance and points update, I was also a little bit apprehensive that would be too fast, especially for newer players or casual players who aren't following all the points adjustments, right? I don't think, is it really beneficial for the game?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I disagree. So what with Uncle Adam? But Drake, what are your opinions?
I think if it was an AOS update, I would like it so when a General's Handbook comes out, they spend the next 6 months identifying all the little problems, and maybe doing FAQs in between for specific factions. So they do that. Then when when half a year has passed from the General's Handbook released, they post all their things and one big thing, and that's the update. And then they do the same thing where they find all the little problems, fix them with FAQs, and then.
So would the FAQs come out in the middle, or would they save them all up and do them just every 6 months?
What I would do is the FAQs would come out for a specific faction, when they needed to update that faction specifically.
I see. So the FAQs would be sort of ongoing.
Yes.
And points would be every 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that I disagree, especially now that we've seen several battle scrolls. I've actually liked most of the direction that they've gone with them, except for that one where they did the hunt and just gave people bonus points for no reason.
Yeah.
That was dumb. But aside from that one, I actually like a lot of the chances that they've taken. And I also like that when you have something that's overpowered, particularly overpowered,
they're just slapping points on it.
Yeah, well, I like that they get, just recently with Soul Blight, right? Soul Blight is strong, but it probably was a little overcooked, right? I mean, especially with original flavor zombies, right? And everything, they were just really, really, really tough. And it took a whole bunch of nerfs. First, they nerfed the Zombie War Scroll. Then they just they jacked up everybody's points in the most recent update. And I think that's good. I mean, I think it's good so that you can have more balanced games. Prior to wargaming, miniature tabletop wargaming, I was very into board games. Still love them. Drake loves them. And there's a lot of talk on the board game forums about balance. Is this game balanced? Is it not? And I can tell you that the more asymmetric the game is, the harder it is to balance, right? If both sides are basically equal, like Go or chess or something like that, it's not too hard to balance. You can get pretty close. But when they're asymmetrical, it's harder and harder. Even though some games do it great, one of our favorite games is War of the Ring.
Oh, yes.
And those two sides play completely differently.
So close each time.
You're either the Shadow trying to defeat Frodo and Sam and obtain the ring, or you're the Free Peoples who are trying to dunk the ring into Mount Doom.
Never! What's happened every time. Never!
And so They're very different, but the game is pretty balanced. It's pretty fair. But when you get to something as asymmetrical as Age of Sigmar, where they're just all over the place in terms of power, you're just not going to have a 50-50 split. And I think that when there's that many moving parts, it's also real easy for game testers, and there's not that many of them, but it's easy to overlook some things because they're playing it the way they like to play it. They've got several different groups, and they all think it's fine. Then when it gets out into the wild, and there's thousands of people playing it, suddenly people start to see, oh, if I mix these two units together, they're super powerful. Or if I can bring these guys and use this strategy, it's really good. And so I would much, much, much rather have a company that supports their game by looking at it and saying, oh, we got a problem here. We got a problem here. Let's fix it.
Fix it, Felix.
So the concern, though, that Uncle Adam had is that good for new players? You're a new player. You just get the rules. You just learn the rules. You've got this game, and suddenly, bam, errata, FAQ, things change. Is that good or bad?
Bad.
You think it's bad?
Because you're like, okay.
Well, I actually don't think it's that bad. And the reason is, if you're brand new or totally casual and you're not following all the updates, the game's still fine. The game's still fine. I think that unless you were, Mr. King Soulblight and just smashing all your friends, I think it's fine. You could have played with any groups. And the fact that they changed the points, 10 points here, 20 points there, here and there a little bit, if your points that you're playing with are slightly off, it's not a big deal. You're going to put them on the table. You're going to have fun with your friends in your garage or your basement or whatever, and it's going to be great. So I actually don't think that frequent updates really affects those kinds of players, the very new, very casual players. And then if you are somebody who's very into the game, so you like to build lists and you like to look at models, you like to get games in, you do want to look at the updates in errata. Well, at that point, I feel like you're not such a casual player anymore. Now you're sort of into it. It's become part of your hobby, and then part of that is looking at the updates. And guess what? If you're a casual player who just plays with your friends, you don't have to follow the updates, right? There's no Games Workshop police that are going to come in and make you play the right way. Great examples, that battle scroll we talked about, the hunt, where it gave you extra points for being a bad army. We didn't even do it. We didn't even use those rules. We just kept playing the game and having fun. We didn't give Night Haunt a bonus point for killing a monster. Because first of all, they were bad and couldn't kill monsters. So it didn't even come into play. But even if it did, we were just playing the game. It's fine. So I really don't see that the changes are that bad. The only thing I think is bad about them is that some players might take it the wrong way. They might look at it and say, in a video game, sometimes they release the video game, you pay $60 for your video game, or more sometimes, and then it's all glitchy and gross. They're like, oh, well, we're going to patch it, we're going to fix it. And you feel like, man, I paid $60 for a game that's half-baked and doesn't even work, right? And if you have that mentality when it comes to wargaming, I could see how people say, oh man, I paid all this money, the game doesn't even work right. It needs patches. But I sort of feel like the game works fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Before the New Balance stuff came out, you were having a great time playing, right? So it didn't stop you from enjoying the game. And the fact that new stuff came out, that's new and new free stuff, right? It's available for free. It's not like you have to pay money to get the secret updates, except for, I guess, General's Handbook. You do have to pay for those. But you get better balanced content. And so I really don't see the negative.
I just think that if a new player had the unlucky chance of just getting an army, paying it all up, doing all this stuff, and they play the first game and maybe their second game, and they're like, okay, I start to understand this, then wham, new points, new stuff, Some of the models are terrible, and they're like, I got 2 games in, and now it's all awful.
Well, I think that there's certainly some of that. Some people are going to get their armies doing really well, and so it gets nerfed, and suddenly you feel like you're playing with half strength units, right? I totally see that, but I think that's sort of an always issue. I think if you're an experienced player, it's going to happen to your army. If you're a new player, it might happen to your army, right? So I think that's going to be an issue either way. I think that for the one thing I could say, though, actually, now that you bring it up, is you might have an army and you're just learning, and maybe you don't have friends to play with, right? You just have the local shop that you go to, your friendly local game store, and you've got some people that you play with, and so they've taught you the game, and you've bought your first models, and you're enjoying your 1,000 point AOS games, and then the battle scroll comes out.
Games Workshop.
Yeah. And suddenly you go in, and your friends at the shop tell you, "Oh yeah, you can't use that unit anymore," or "Oh yeah, that's too many points now." And that could be a bummer.
Yeah.
Because if you have your own group of friends that can do whatever you want, then who cares? Mm-hmm. But if the only people you can play with are people who are enforcing that kind of stuff, okay, I could see that as being a negative. But I think that that negative pales in comparison to getting a better game, a more balanced game, theoretically. And you know what? If they were doing crazy stuff every quarter and just changing points wildly and making the game unplayable, and like, for example, I was not a super fan of the 6-month General Handbook.
Ugh, hated it.
It was too big of a change, too soon, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to do a General's Handbook where you layer on, now we've got primal dice and Andorian locusts and all this stuff. Cool. I think that should be something that happens once a year, right? And let us play in that sandbox before the rules change again. But when it was happening every 6 months, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel, you barely got through. We barely got through all 6 missions before it was time to change again, right? That didn't feel good. That felt very fast. But the battle scroll updates have been smaller and more targeted. And at least so the way that they're doing them, I think is good. I like that they're doing them at the quarter. If they were doing General's Handbook level changes every 3 months, that would be ridiculous and bad, for sure.
Yes.
For sure. But I guess that what they're doing is, it's working for me. I like it. I think the game is in a good spot, and I like that they notice the problems and fix them. Because coming from the board game world, there's a famously a game called A Few Acres of Snow, and these people found a strategy that was unbeatable. It's unbeatable. If you do that strategy, you win. And the game designer commented on the game, and this is paraphrasing, but basically what he said was, "Well, don't do that then." So there was no errata. There was no fix. There was no patch. There was no nothing. It was just like, well, don't do that. And so now you've got a game that if you know the secret strategy, it is unwinnable by the other player.
You both do the secret strategy.
It's asymmetric, so only one person can. So yeah, if one person does the strategy, then they will win.
There's no way to stop it.
Nope. So I very much appreciate a game that updates a little bit more often and is trying to provide a balanced experience. Will it ever be perfectly balanced?
No.
No, it's never going to be. But to try to get it there. And that's actually one of the nice things. Like I said earlier, if you don't know the latest points and your points are off by a little bit, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to be that unbalancing if you paid 10 more points or 10 fewer points for a unit. Mm. Any final thoughts on balance updates?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
All right.
I think we did it all.
Let us know what you think do you enjoy the quarterly battle scrolls? Do you think it should be less frequent? more frequent, I'd be a little bit hesitant. Although I was hesitant for quarterly, I'm hesitant for more frequent, but maybe.
What about eighthly?
Eighthly? Eighthly?
Oh no, that's like every 2 months.
It'd be more often than that.
Like every month.
Well, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. This has been another episode of Battle Ready.
Ready.
Thanks so much for watching.